rise of nationalism and what this means to international business and advisors. Shortly you'll be hearing from our three main sponsors. They'll introduce themselves, and then there'll be three questions that appear on the board, and you'll be able to hear their feedback. It's a discussion-based panel. I've asked them to be slightly controversial. I've asked them to share their views honestly. It is a subject that fascinates everybody. I think how we will be judged this period in history, I don't think anybody knows, but it's certainly fascinating. We all have an opinion on it, and you're going to be hearing from these guys now. So, Michael, if I can ask you to introduce yourself, please.
My name is Michael Dominguez. I'm an attorney with Gonzalez Olivari, LLC, in Houston, Texas. We do primarily immigration, all aspects of immigration, including business immigration.
Okay, thank you.
I'm João Curiel. I'm managing partner at Valadas Curiel & Associados. We hope to be your go-to firm in Portugal. We are focused on litigation, real estate, and private clients, but we do about everything.
Thank you.
Money.
Nice one. I am Urs Breitsprecher from Germany, Düsseldorf. I'm a dual qualified lawyer. I'm also a lawyer or solicitor in England and a German lawyer. I do mainly M&A, inbound and outbound investment.
Okay, thank you. So they're all prepared their questions in advance. This first one is for Michael. He's going to set the scene for a minute or two, and then the others will share their opinion. So, Michael, first question. Has the new Trump administration made it more difficult to transfer executive, managerial, or skilled workers to the US?
Well, despite what you might have heard, the U.S. is still open for business. There's still investment in the United States. There's still investment visas. The regulations haven't changed. There hasn't been any substantial changes to the laws. As the White House has to point out often, his tweets are not necessarily policy. So, but that being said, there is some increased scrutiny with applications. There is some issues with some of the highly skilled workers in the H-1B sector, with examination of wages and things like that. With transfers and L1s, they're looking at the companies. They want to make sure that they're adequately capitalized in the United States. They want to make sure that those companies have been set up the right way. And that's why it's important from the onset, if you have anybody who has a company who's interested in opening a subsidiary in the United States, is working with an immigration attorney, preferably us, to make sure that everything's set up the right way in the first place to make sure they qualify.
Okay. João, your comments? Your thoughts on
Well, we're
Mr.
supposed
Trump?
to be controversial.
Oh, he likes Trump. He likes Trump.
It's a little bit preposterous with so many Americans to be talking about America, even though I'm a fan of America, past and present and future. I think Trump is a blessing in disguise, because from my point of view, or from a European point of view, everything that has been happening in the last year is a test to the resilience of the institutions. So when we take on the newspapers and we see that the administration decided to difficult immigration or ban travel, and then you see the courts responding. So a lot of these, I think, I never seen the American institutions reacting to so fast to the new situation. And as Michael pointed out, tweets are not policy. Even though I think the perception all over the world that is this has to do with this rise of nationalism, and this is not just an American situation. I believe that we are getting into a politics of envy. I don't like too much people. The guy next door has more than me, so I don't like it. So it's about these kind of things. Frankly, I'm just interested about what's going on with Trump and with all the American system. I know that you have a system of checks and balances, and there is a lot of players involved. And if you ask me, of course, lowering the taxes the way they have been lowered in the United States is going to have a global impact. I would like that my country will be forced to take their taxes down because of that kind of competition. So not all of that is bad, and all of this is a challenge.
You can't lower your taxes in Portugal. You're already so low. Well, I think it's an interesting impact. You're right. There's more. Or the US is inviting business to the US, but I'm not sure if the US is anymore going outside of the US. I think this is a real problem. And what we face in Europe is that there are more people from the Middle East or from China now would like to immigrate to Europe. We have more and more requests, and I think most of them wanted to go to the US, and they face more and more problems, especially when they're from the Middle East. So me as a German, I'm really very concerned about nationalism because we have our history. We saw what could happen. We see it again, so we are very sensitive about the topic of nationalism. And on the other hand, I have to thank Mr. Trump because of Trump, Europe is getting independent. We are growing up, and after the Second World War, we were really kind of a child of the US, and now we get independent. It pushed Europe together, especially with the Brexit. I think these founding states getting closer together. We have more business now with the Middle East, with Africa, Southeast Asia. Thank you to Trump, because before we had more business with the US, always relying on it, and now we have more business somewhere else. So thank you. I don't like him, but he brings business.
Well, I think it is, to some extent, a lot of it's the perception. A lot of it is the perception that the U.S. is possibly hostile to certain parts of the world, to investments from other parts of the world as well. As far as Trump being I think when you were saying that he's good for a testing of our institutions, I think that's a very optimistic viewpoint. Our institutions are resilient. The American people, I don't think, have ever encountered quite a presidency like this, quite an administration like this. And in a lot of ways, their inability to make a lot of the changes they want to make stems from a lot of the changes that they propose sometimes already exist. A lot of the immigration proposals that they make, these are things that are already done. People are already vetted before they come into the United States for the refugee program. People are already looked at, scrutinized, and given a very, very complex security background check before they immigrate, whether it's for a non-immigrant visa or for any other purpose. So, to that extent, I mean, a lot of the things that Trump proposes sometimes already exist, which shows that there's at some level kind of a lack of knowledge about how the system works.
Is that just policy, do you think, or is that genuine perception?
I think that's policy. I think that's just generally a policy issue on their part. And I think the perception as far as there is a perception out there that there is a hostility toward the Middle East, and to that extent, our loss is Europe's gain.
Yep.
But and that's why I'm trying to reassure people that nothing has changed with regards to how the investor visas work or how the process works for transferring executives to the U.S.
And another good news is now America has a really sophisticated immigration law. In Germany, we didn't have immigration law, but now our new government, when we have it, they will have an immigration law for the first time for business immigration in the next 2 years, so maybe 3 years. So,
we have a law in place for business immigration, and I think what people don't like is uncertainty. So if I'm going to go somewhere, investing or traveling or whatever, I don't want to invest and in the next 2 years or 4 years, everything is going to change. So our government is not really a role model, but when you come to invest, you have like a contract. You have stable taxes for 10 years, and you can count on that. And if you talk to people that come from these rest areas of the planet, it's not only the Middle East. Look, nowadays, everybody is mad about compliance, money laundering, secrecy, but a lot of people from a lot of places, they are not worried about paying taxes or not. They are just worried about not being killed or kidnapped or put in jail, like if you come from Venezuela or if you come from a lot of countries like that. So we have like a competition between this idea of getting tax, and then people need still some kind of security. I think is the main reason. You want to provide for your family, and you want to go to a place that is stable, and it will offer you a sense of security. Like you said, it's perception again.
but why do you have so low tax that even Madonna is now moving to Lisbon? So it's not about security.
I think it's about the guys. Madonna is about the guys, nice guys in Lisbon.
All right, okay. Any final comments, Michael?
Well, basically, as to your point, there are people that for whom a permanent residency in the United States sometimes not always the best solution. Going back to what you were saying about they want to have security, but sometimes they are worried about taxes. Sometimes people that are high net worth, don't understand that they might be taxed on their global income. They might be taxed in other ways. So they're not necessarily looking for permanent residency in the United States so much as a temporary solution or a temporary visa, which can be provided depending on whether there's a treaty or not. But in the case of people who are, like you said, coming from Venezuela or coming from other states that pose a lot greater danger to their safety, I think they're less worried about taxes than they are worried about the ability to raise their kids, be safe, get them a good education. So that's something.
But in a way, it is as hard to get permanent residency in the United States as getting out of it. Because they won't let you. You have to pay exit taxes.
Exactly. And that's another thing you have to explain. And I'm not a tax guy, but I always explain that to my clients. I'm like, I'm going to have you talk to somebody because sometimes I have people that have become permanent residents. They come to me and they're like, well, I've decided that I don't want to pay taxes or I want to go, somewhere else where I don't have to pay.
Portugal?
Yeah, exactly. And you have to explain to them, depending on, what your income was, your assets, and everything else, there's going to be an exit tax associated with that. So that's definitely something they have to keep in mind.
Okay.
All right, super. Well, we'll move on to the next question. This one's for you, Joe, to set the scene. And we heard from Rui this morning about the openness of Portugal. So maybe the rise of nationalism hasn't quite hit Portugal yet. But whilst many nations are looking inward, Portugal still appears to be open, particularly from an immigration and a foreign direct investment perspective. Is this true?
Well, I have to be a little bit romantic about this. You're all standing in Lisbon. You look at this castle. It has been standing there for 900 years. It has been Moorish. We have had the Moors, Jews, pirates, corsairs, crusaders, everyone. So we are really a mix of races. My name is Coriel. The biggest synagogue in Europe, in Amsterdam, is full of Coriels. I cannot trace back my ancestors to Jewish history, but my name is Jewish. So we are a melting pot. So being a small country and a little bit adventurous, because in the 16th century we were sailing all over the world and going as far as China and Japan. You know that deep fry that you get, the teriyaki in Japan? We brought it to them. We got the ukuleles to Hawaii. So despite being a small country, we have some things. And we do have sometimes we get mad, like we got in 2010, and we were at the verge of bankruptcy. And we were rescued by the IMF and the European Union, and we had the stiff adjustment process. A lot of people lost their jobs, all wages were frozen, and we were like in the depths of misery. So in a way, I think we were taught a lesson, and we said we don't want any more of that, of being tutored by the IMF and all these fascists of the financial system. So basically, one of these things you say, like, well, let's make it easy to do business here. So yes, we don't have that much, we are not very much picky about who comes. If you want to invest, I think from 500,000 euros, it's like objectivity. We always had visas for investors, but it was at the discretion of the public servant. It might get up and be on the wrong side of the thing. So now it's objective. And our corporate tax is not that low, but I think it's the business environment that really attracts people. Skilled workforce, and it's easy. Well, better than my words, go around Lisbon, stay for a few days, and you will understand why a lot of people are coming here. And Apple and Google and Facebook are setting up some kind of services here because we don't have maybe some constraints in the labor law like France, or we don't have so much regulation as Germany. So we are in the middle term. And of course, it's competitive because living here is a fraction of what it costs to live in another European capital. And there is a lot of success stories to prove that. One other thing, just not to be too, indulge myself in very explanations. The Chinese are very smart people. In 2012, when everybody was fleeing Portugal, we were getting out of the euro, they came in and bought everything. Because they are vying for the long term. They don't have shareholders to respond to at the end of the quarter. They say, well, this looks nice, these utility companies, and these ports and these insurance companies. And so they made very good deals. But we were a little bit lucky because the kind of Chinese that came in are the guys like Fosun, the entrepreneurs, the guys that were building up something. So I think we are on the right mindset and open for business, as you said.
Okay, good. Michael, as a US guy, what's your perception of Portugal and perhaps Europe in general?
Well, I think Portugal is doing a lot of good things as far as with the way their investment visa is set up. I've often talked to people in the U.S. who aren't really interested in even maybe having a business or having a managed investment so much as having the ability to maybe retire in the U.S. And there's not a specific visa that allows you to do that. And from what I understand, there are options for people that maybe don't want to invest in a business, but would want to.
If you take a pension, you pay zero tax here and zero tax anywhere.
And they say there's a European visa program for 350,000 euro.
No, but if you are European, you pay nothing. The thing is, for those of you who are familiar with the double taxation treaties, pensions can only be taxed on the country of residence unless they are paid for the state. So we take advantage of that loophole and say, okay, you are not taxed in France, and we decline to tax you. So it's zero tax for pensioners. And if you got a big pension pot, that is worth a lot of money.
And have you found that we were talking earlier about that the Chinese people came in and there was a lot of purchases of property and facilities here in 2012. Has there been any kind of resentment or backlash or anything as far as that's concerned?
I don't think so. We are very tolerant as a society. We have this Catholic background, which means that we are a lot of bureaucrats. A great writer, Anthony Burgess, who won a Nobel Prize, and most of you might know for The Clockwork Orange. In one of his books called Earthly Powers, there is this conversation between the diplomat and the Pope. And the diplomat, which happens to be the brother of the Pope, says, you Catholics, you are very complicated. You know, the guys, the Protestants, they talk to God. God, help me out, blah, 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 blah. You don't allow that. You have to go to a priest who then intercede with a small saint that knows the bigger saint, that is acquainted with Virgin Mary, that will talk to God. It's a mafia. So this to tell that even though we have this Catholic background, we really don't have racial tensions or religious tensions. You know, everybody goes about their business. We don't care.
Okay, me as a German, I'm not so romantic, so I put the first romantic words first. I really like Portugal. It's a lovely country, great food, great drinks. But to be honest, you have to be open for everyone to compete. You have low taxes, you have a golden visa program to attract business, so otherwise you couldn't survive. So let's take it seriously, and that's a good thing. You have to compete with other countries like Malta, some people from Malta are here, or the Netherlands. And if you look to smaller countries, you have some benefits. You have to give them like tax benefits or other benefits. And that's the reason why you attract so many companies. Like Ireland, here's someone from Ireland, he's doing the same thing. And me from Germany, I'm not always happy about it, like selling a visa for Europe for 350,000 euro. I wish I could sell a visa in Germany too, to be honest.
But you have our disadvantages. You know what? We are all lawyers, accountants, auditors, whatever. And the beauty of our professions is that there is something for everybody. We don't have the same corporate tax as Ireland. It's the double as Ireland. But you know that NetJet has its headquarters in Portugal. Why is that? It's the cost of registering an aircraft. It's a fraction of what it is in England. So they have a shell company with all the 700 planes that pay very little to have the registration and the maintenance, and then they shift the profits elsewhere. So you can find deals everywhere in Europe because every country, for I don't know, mysterious reasons, has advantages that you will not suspect they have.
That's what I say. It's fine with me. You have to have such advantages. But I wouldn't take romantic words. I would just say it's a business. And because of the business or the low taxes, that people come to Portugal. You have sunshine, you have good weather, good food, but I think this is not the priority number one. Priority number one is you have a good business surrounding for them, low taxes, well-educated people, low salaries. So that's the reason why they come, and it's the reason why they're not coming to Germany. Germany has one benefit, they have a big market, but they're expensive and complicated.
But you are like brothers. I drive a Porsche. So if all the business...
Thank you for buying some
if all the business
saw that.
was concentrated in Germany, who will they sell the Porsches to?
João, any final thoughts on this question?
Well, you raised the thing about tax competition. Let me tell you something. I think it's preposterous and arrogant that big countries say to a small country like Antigua or any other country, you cannot have low taxes. Why not? Is their advantage. So they are, like we are on the western side of Europe. We are not, of course, the cost of doing business in Germany has to be more expensive because they have another infrastructure that we don't have, like in London or in Paris. So the things are not really equal. They are just, in a way, identical. So I don't see any problem in having a tax advantage. From a business point of view, me being a lawyer and trying to portray myself as a problem solver, what I want is the things to work. I go to the minister and we get the license. I get the permit, I get the license. That's what I'm looking for, the ease of doing business. And from that point of view, I'm sure that Germany is fantastic because like this.
We can go into detail afterwards. Maybe not on stage.
Frankly, I think it's easier to do business here than in England. You know, all these regulations and political correctness and you know, all the red tape. I would gather that it is much more easier to open up a restaurant in Lisbon than in New York. Every restaurateur in New York State is a nightmare. You know, before you sell a sandwich, you have to prove that you are a fantastic Christian and everything. I don't know, a lot of other stuff.
All right, thank you. Very good. And so the final question, this one's really directed to you initially, Urs. One of my favourite subjects, everyone's favourite subject. I know it's one of your favourite subjects as well. So the question, how has the current political situation in Europe affected M&A deals? And what is the outlook for a post-Brexit environment?
So Brexit is my topic. I really like it. I was really depressed when the English voted the wrong way to leave us alone with the French. So
most people here, too, myself included.
But then they voted for it. So I still hope there will be an exit from the Brexit, but it's now 1 year ahead and they are out. So what's the results of the M&A market? I talked to Simon Roos. You're here anywhere. He said the M&A market right now in England is really good. I can imagine because they're hiring up to have the deal done before they leave, because no one knows what will happen when they leave. I think, again, for the rest of Europe, especially for Germany, the Brexit, even if I'm really sorry about the English are leaving, I don't know how they would like to play football with all the European players, but it's another topic. It brings a lot of business to Europe and Germany. So we have many clients from the Middle East. They used to invest in real estate in England, and they're now coming to Germany trying to buy some real estate. The problem is we don't have so much real estate left. So the yields are really bad right now, but at least I got 2 deals with you. So if anyone wants to invest in German real estate, just talk to me later on. I think it's a sad occasion, but good for business because there are more and more deals. We helped a lot of companies coming over from England, moving headquarters or buying a European company so they have a leg in the market. So I think for the business, it's a good thing. For me personally, I am really sad about that they leave us alone with the rest of the...
Well, it is sad. But, Michael, your perception as a US guy to the subject?
Well, I think that for the financial services industry and everything else, what we're looking at is there going to be a different capital in Europe as opposed to London now that London's no longer going to be part of that common market? Yeah. I mean, is that something that's already in progress?
Passport, yeah.
Yeah.
We will see who will be the capital then. It's Paris, Milano, maybe Frankfurt, maybe Dublin, maybe Lisbon, maybe Luxembourg. So they're all competing quite heavily. And I think no one can really be like London because they are already there for so long time. So maybe it's somewhere there, somewhere there. So, but you need a European passport, and you won't get it in London anymore.
been more jobs created in the financial services in the City of London since Brexit. So a lot of people in the city aren't actually that frightened at the moment.
Yeah,
Don't think
because
much will
they're
change.
English, they don't understand that next year, end of March, they are out.
It's going to change.
I heard that the government in England just 1 year before Brexit happens have a paper stating, oh, it's not good for the economy, and they try to hide it. That says it all?
Yeah, well, that's pretty obvious, I think. But,
Yeah.
Zhao, your thoughts?
Well, I have mixed feelings about Brexit, and I have a theory. I know the problem with the Brits is that they took Europe too seriously. Let me say.
You're right.
The European Court of Justice, I remember they had a problem with this cleric from Finsbury Park, the guy with the hook, you remember? He was an aid preacher, and they convicted him, and they tried to deport him back to Egypt, where he was from. And he appealed to the European Court of Justice. How you cannot? Because he's not going to have a fair trial in Egypt. He's a fucking Egyptian. Why wouldn't he have a fair trial? Well, that's the kind of stuff that we in Portugal will never say, okay, get on the plane and we'll look about it later. So a lot of the Latin countries, we have the same regulations, but you don't take it seriously. We postpone, we procrastinate. Oh, where was that paper? Oh, that woman that was dealing with that, she got sick.
We do the same in Germany.
Well, maybe we'll transpose this directive like in the next 10 years or so. But the Brits were very good at following every direction from the European institutions, and they were fed up with it. Because there is a book, I can't recall the name, but the guy has this theory. When the European Union was set up, it was in need of a lot of regulations to harmonize the market. If you wanted to sell shoes from Portugal to England, you needed a lot of certifications. And so the first batch of regulation was very much needed. But then these people had very nice jobs, very well paid, and said, well, we cannot go home. We have to keep on doing regulations. And so they are, now you have like, I don't know, maybe 500 people regulating the length of condoms and this kind of stuff, and cucumbers and twisting bananas and this kind of thing. And that is very unnerving. But if the Brits can go back, can step back in that, don't take them too seriously. Just, it's not that. Of course, that creates uncertainty. I've been going to London since I was 15 or something, and I think they managed to build a cosmopolitan city like no other in Europe. You see, we have this discussion about people with veils in France and that. In England, that was never an issue, at least in central London. They just, you have money, come on in and spend the money, and we don't care. I think this is under menace, because with populism and nationalism, there is always an element of xenophobia and racism. And even though I like Boris Johnson and Rees-Mogg and these kind of conservative guys, I think there are a little bit loony bins.
This is true.
But you see, there is a backlash to this, and there's also business. As you might know, there is a lot of Brits that live in Portugal for ages. They have been around in Porto. All the Porto wine is English families that have been there since the 18th century. And now these guys are getting the Portuguese nationality, because you never know. It doesn't hurt to have another passport. So, but to finalize my question, I think they don't have a clue. I think they are totally lost. From
At
one
least
side
the English living in England, because we have the same in Germany. There were more people applying for more English applying for German citizenship within the last year than ever before. So all my English friends living in Germany, they all applied for the German passport. But they know that they get the British passport back when they go back, so they have now 2 passports. And I agree with you, they have no clue what to do.
What's good for our business? They are not going to apply for the American passport. Otherwise, they're going to pay taxes in America.
Yeah,
That's what happened to Boris Johnson,
Yeah, maybe England will be the
income,
51st state of America soon. I don't know.
Well, that's the plan, right? They're gonna join up with the U.S., right? As far as for treaties.
That's what
Ask the English. I don't know what they are.
but that is an ancient plan, because Jefferson always told that Hamilton wanted to install monarchy in the United States. So finally, we're coming to that.
We're rejoining the Commonwealth. Yeah, that'll work out.
Of
No.
course. Of course, yeah. Nice touch. Nice touch.
I have to say that I voted to remain,
Good man.
but now that we are leaving, which was a democratic decision of the country, and we take democracy quite seriously in the UK, and one of the big issues was being regulated by unelected bureaucrats in Brussels was a problem. We won't go into all that detail, but suffice it to say, it is in the interests of other economies to say uncertainty, departure, blah, blah, blah. Of course, is a very good exponent of this whole topic. But I'll give you one statistic announced last week, which is Citibank, which is one of the biggest banks in the world, announced last week that it will retain in London all its 9,000 financial services people and will not move one of them to Europe, irrespective of the outcome of the negotiation. So I think the other important point to make, I would like, is that I think some people feel that England doesn't love Europe anymore. Of course we do. We've been friends for hundreds of years. We will continue.
Sorry, we have been friends. You stole our soccer championship.
We love you, but you don't love us.
Any final comments on what Simon said and Brexit generally?
So you were right. They didn't know how to react with legislation here, and I will miss my English friends. But you get asylum in Germany and Europe whenever you want. Yes, but you were right too. It's good business for us because uncertainty, it's nothing good for business, but for us lawyers and accountants, it's nothing better than uncertainty because we get more and more requests. So we don't know the answers, but we always pretend to know the answers. And so it's a sad story, but a good story for us, and we have a laugh on the continent.
Yeah, indeed, I agree. Okay, so that's the end of the 3 questions.